Welcome, Homeschool Mamas. I am Teresa Wiedrich from Homeschool Mama Self-Care on Facebook and Instagram. If you don't already know me, you can find me online at www.capturingthecharmlife.com. I'm a 15-year homeschool mom of 4 kids, and I help homeschool moms turn their doubts and their overwhelm into confidence, clarity, and vision. And I have the privilege of introducing you to someone that is close to my heart because Erica Kesselman, the owner at Conscious Homeschool, is a gal who often focuses on the very same things that I do. And that is all about how you relate to yourself, how it affects to your relationship or affects your relationship with how you relate to your kids, and also how you relate to homeschooling and how you perceive or understand what an education is anyways. So I am so pleased to introduce you to Erica, Conscious Homeschooling. There are things that I post from her Instagram page. Hi,
Hi, how are
how
you,
are you?
Teresa? Good, how are you?
Erica in action. You're outside enjoying the
Yeah,
sun?
I am. We just got to the park with my kids.
Nice,
So the
perfect,
kids are on the balance beam over here.
lovely. Well, it's so lovely to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for having me.
So the weather out there is amenable to just hanging out at the playground and
The playground, pool, beach. This is the hottest time of the year, really, for
is it?
everybody. It's pretty hot here in Florida, yeah.
Oh, okay. So would you say that you've already started homeschooling? This is a typical time of year you start?
Yeah, our rhythm and flow is really just like learning through our life experiences. We're unschoolers.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 little ones. They're 2, 4, and 6, soon to be 5, soon to be 7. They're still very young, so all of our learning is play-based, game schooling, um, adventuring out in the town and community. Just a lot of play, yeah. So, and we use various curriculum materials. Go to the library once a week. So we don't have a particular start day per
Right.
se. Launching this is our homeschooling day, but we always stay in touch with homeschooling groups in the community. So there was a homeschooling group that we started up with last week. So various things like that.
So I just mentioned that you and I often share similar concepts or focus. And it is about, I think, in my words, I'd say self-directed learning and how you show up affecting your relationships. And you specifically chose the concept of conscious homeschooling. I would love to hear where that title came from.
Yeah, thanks. So consciousness is just raising our awareness of our relationship, like our patterns, our thought patterns, our feelings, needs, beliefs, really like where our patterning came from generations past, from the way we were raised, from society and culture, from our traditional school systems, like systems in healthcare, in our governments, like just the systems that are in place. So raising our consciousness of how we've been kind of conditioned, like trained to
Yeah.
perhaps, think certain ways and be, expected to behave in certain ways, expected to learn in a particular way. So kind of raising our consciousness about like, well, if that's not really in alignment with what your, true self is, like what your intuition tells you that you should be doing. So kind of raising an awareness of like, these are the patterns, but if they are not in alignment with like your intuitive self, then let's explore like what your own unique creative powers are, your own intuition, um, where your own intuition would guide you. So that's the approach too with like the way I approach learning. It just allows students to explore their gifts, their natural gifts, their natural talents, their natural passions. And at this age when my kids are so young, it's so interest-led learning where they're able to explore what they're interested in at the time. And obviously the environment is
Yeah.
important in that because you do want to cultivate a love of learning, cultivate and nurture their curiosities, and
Yeah.
have the right amount of the right resources available, the right community support, things like that. But conscious homeschooling itself is really just raising our awareness of our thought patterns, our feelings, needs, and beliefs about ourselves and how they affect other relationships. The relationships with our children and relationships with our partners and our family members,
You
things
have
like
said so much in that. And when I had a child or children that are 2, 4, and 6, I knew very little of those things. I really did or
that.
didn't. So tell me what your story is. Like, how did you come to consider those things?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It was various things. In raising, since the kids were born, just kind of feeling a bit like many moms do, an overwhelm, like a
Uh-huh.
confusion, loss of clarity, of like kind of losing a sense of self. And I realized kind of like I'm not even sure who I know who I am. It just the overwhelm and often our my triggers would really point me to the direction of which like where I need to look a little bit closer and ask deeper questions like when I would react to my kids out of my own insecurities, whether and I would be just kind of like that stormy reactive mom, like yelling or complaining or kind of dumping my insecurities or overwhelm onto them.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel like so terrible and guilty as a mom, trying to like not able to really cultivate a overall secure attachment with them. So it's just these triggers really pointed me in a direction of like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on here. So it just led me to various works, like Dr. Shefali Tasbury was
Mm-hmm.
he's like the trailblazer for me. And the book, The Conscious Parent, when I read that book, just opened my eyes to this whole other way of thinking and whole other perspective that just aligned with my need to find my inner strength, my inner calm, my sense of self, things like that.
Those are such big components of really showing up in your homeschool on purpose. And just like you said, being at peace with how you're showing up, which frankly, I just want to add though, for all the homeschool moms out there that are overwhelmed or still have moments of overwhelm, which surely we all do. And that's our reality. We have our moments and we will have our moments, but there's something really powerful and unleashing almost about accepting the reality of our messes. We accept the mess and we're less likely to have a mountain of a mess.
Yes, that radical self-acceptance, radical the
Yeah.
self-compassion and forgiveness. A lot of us, like me in particular, have just trouble really forgiving ourselves for things
Mm-hmm.
that we've said, done, like
Of course.
falling
Yeah.
into the territory of like being in your worst inner critic. But
Yeah.
those things like that too are part of what makes you a whole, complete being. And so being able to accept that in yourself and realize that that's where your opportunities for growth and transformation really are, and the ability to kind of figure out, where those wounds are that you have to bring up to heal, to really integrate like your whole self.
Yeah.
All those things.
Because
So
our
it's kind
kids
of,
are really, there are many mirrors, I say. And
yeah,
we think that, yeah, but they're doing this thing and it's really bugging me. And that's the reason why I'm bugged. But actually, yeah, but not really. It has something to do with you feeling triggered by whatever they're doing, which is a reflection on what you're dealing with inside here. So it's tricky to see that though, to kind of accept the fact that it really doesn't matter what anybody does outside there. How we are is how we're responsible for who we are and how we show up.
absolutely. Yeah, taking that self responsibility. And that's hard to do. Like if you don't
Oh
have the
yeah,
support system, the right resources or ability to kind of like raise your knowledge base around
yeah,
this kind of perspective and knowing kind of the steps it takes to really nurture yourself and heal those wounds.
yeah,
But for sure, like when we look at our children, it's often, yeah, an exact mirror reflection of ourselves as children. And it brings up like all of that, your triggers are these unfelt, unprocessed emotions that have yet to be felt. And so now they're, rising to the surface, and it's an opportunity for you to figure out, well, where is this coming from? Why am I doing this? So integrating a whole like body connection therapies, like with, um, various like trauma informed therapies, like just movement, breath work, things like that, journaling and dance and singing, just things that help you move this unfelt, these unprocessed emotions out of your body has been really therapeutic for me, and very supportive and in the journey. And as you said, the overwhelm, perhaps, feeling of, uncertainty or insecurity. I don't see that. It's not that those feelings would ever go away, like vanish
Uh-huh.
forever. It's
Yeah.
a journey and it's a process, and it's a part of, though, um, your ability to grow into a more complete and fulfilled human, really. And showing our humanity is important in that. You're never gonna, it's not about the end goal of saying, oh, I
Right.
got it, I have all the answers. It's definitely an unfolding and a lifelong journey of trying to figure out who you are and how you work and how to better care for your needs, speak up for your needs, how to better self-regulate, all those
Yeah.
things.
First, we accept the mess. And that, frankly, is something that I think a lot of people really don't want to do, because they think if I could just make somebody else do something different, then I wouldn't feel messy. It's not real. But also, we'll not have a checklist that we can do, we can check off, that makes us feel like, okay, now we have never lost our temper with our child. We've never spoken in a way that we didn't want to speak, or show up in a way we didn't want to show up. It won't happen. We will always be on a growth trajectory. And that's part of what we're doing, is we're in a growth mindset, assuming that we'll always be in the process of growth. And our kids will definitely give us opportunities to grow.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know that for sure. I mean, you've been such a great role model for the whole homeschooling community. And I appreciate, sharing stories together, and appreciate you
Yeah.
having me here. But you're absolutely right. I mean, being able to model that for your children is so empowering in and of itself. Being able to, look at your, insecurities and your self, inner critic, and really like kind of befriending those uncomfortable feelings. Befriending,
Exactly.
one of the pillars
Yeah.
of conscious parenting is like all feelings are valid and welcome. If you're feeling, a bit sad or a bit gloomy, exploring that and modeling for the kids, of course, how to express it in a healthy way, which
Yes.
is a challenge in and of itself too, because we
Absolutely.
haven't, it's
Yeah.
not part of our culture, part of our history to have a, a solid, like, an awareness of our emotions. Emotional intelligence, IQs probably are quite, mediocre at best. So raising their emotional intelligence about, naming these emotions, naming these feelings, how to process them, how to cope with them in healthy ways. That's like a large part of the learning journey in and of itself too, because kids can't, I mean, humans won't be able to learn and flourish and reach their highest fullest potential if they're feeling stuck in their bodies, like scared, or if they're feeling like these unfelt feelings, if they're feeling shamed or
Yeah.
blamed or punished for,
Yeah.
being sad or throwing a tantrum or things like that. So raising our emotional intelligence levels is a huge part of, like, my program and my mission. And I think a lot of people right now are just, because there's so much going on in the world, obviously, right now, that has been just heart wrenching, right?
Yeah,
So how to,
I think we've all been in a vice in some form,
yeah,
and we actually have to deal with the stuff. And it absolutely reveals whatever stuff we have, and we're either sinking or swimming. And so we learn the most in those scenarios. But when, I look at you and I think you have a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and I absolutely was not there. And being a reactive parent, that's my go-to. And, I have a trauma background in my own childhood. So I've been trained in how to avoid anger, which is like not a thing. You can't do that. And I've been trained in but I can be angry sometimes because it's valid, but other people can't. Or, all of the intensities around emotions, everything that is like not emotional regulation, that's what I was trained in. And I know that very few of us actually are parented with parents that actually know how to do emotional regulation. But it starts with us, and we start in a place of, like we say, accepting our actual feelings, sitting with them. Like what my process is to practice sitting with them and allowing myself to feel them, which I used to avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
Because if you avoided it, we could pretend it away. Except that that is not the case. They actually just keep getting bigger to the point where you lose it, or you go inside yourself and become very sad, or some other alternative. But then you have to deal with them, but you sit with them and you let yourself feel it in your body and recognize that you're feeling it in your hands or your gut or your stomach or your head or your heart. And then you say, okay, for me, really breathing does help slow me down. And it slows all my physiological systems. And then I start to say, okay, what am I really feeling? And it took me a while to actually identify with that, because identifying with feelings wasn't a thing. And then recognizing that the intense emotions, I don't have to be afraid of them. They will pass. They always do. But ask myself, what's the thought behind the feeling? Because there's always some thought. And like I shared in a live yesterday, and this is a real one for me, and it sounds ridiculous, but I've listened to enough homeschool or enough moms over the years to know that my ridiculous might not be your ridiculous, but we all have these like stories. We're like, what am I saying out loud? And for me, one of the things I was triggered by is when kids broke things. And they're breaking things. I'm like, they don't love me. They don't value my things. Actually, they're just kids. They're just childish. They just do the thing. And then I have to question myself and ask, that's not really true? And no, is it? And what's the other perspective? Kids are kids. Stuff gets broken. So I'm going to have to stop buying stuff until about 2030. Or
Yeah,
buy second
I
hand.
say that all that.
And it's a tiny, silly example, but that's the intention, is to show you that actually it is, questioning the thoughts behind the feelings, no matter what the story is, and then trying to get perspective or reframe it. Sometimes it's just a matter of meeting your needs, and you feel intense because you're hangry, as they call it, or something simple.
Yeah, great point. You brought up so many great points, so many gems there. Really, and from the beginning of like being in this emotional dark ages and being trained, being really conditioned to think that feeling is bad. Like we've been making this connection. It's not okay to feel, like it's only okay to, perhaps feel happy and, content and pleased. So yeah, with that comes just a lot of harm in the end, because we're unaware of, it's in our biology to feel and to, and if you're not afraid of your emotions, they do just come in waves. You're able to, your body is built to process these emotions. There, you feel it strongly and then it dissipates. But if you don't feel it strongly, or if you don't move it out of your body, perhaps like in a healthy way, then it does remain stuck. And that's where I find, I myself have gone through your own, autoimmune disorders, illnesses, disorders, your just anxieties, depression, things like that. Your mental health is affected because of this stuck emotion. So I appreciate you sharing that, like, and the story you share too, how, these things that, your kids are not adults. Like they don't have the same brains as adults. They're not going to be able to plan and organize and, think into the future of, okay, if I think about the consequence. If I take down this glass jar, this glass vase to look at the flowers, it could slip and fall or crash over the floor. And they don't mean to do these things. They don't have, and, that kind of intentional ill intent to manage things. I mean, if anything, through their strong emotions, perhaps they're going to be throwing, kicking, things like that. But that's where the adult or the caregiver is so really critical in those moments. Bring
Yeah.
a sense of calm to be able to co-regulate and help them because
Right.
they can do that themselves. But yeah, the way you talk about the feelings have the thoughts associated with them. So yeah, what kind of thoughts are following this, and is that thought true? And is
Yeah.
the belief of yourself true? Often in those moments, our conditioning has left us with so many limiting beliefs about ourselves. Like, I can't do this. I'm not enough. I'm a failure, or I'm not worthy. So, connecting all of the dots of
Yeah.
if you're feeling this and then you're thinking these thoughts that are really essentially not true of who you are, and they're impacting your ability to show up in the most healthy way, the most beneficial way, like for yourself, first of all, and then for your kids. So
Yeah.
I
The
appreciate
most
you.
important part of homeschooling, I think, is this, what we're talking about. Because,
Yeah.
people always ask about the S question, socialization. Or I don't know if they're really doing that anymore. As of last year, every human being was asking about that question for a while. But whatever the case, it was a big question. And then the academics, can we get really good, solid academics for homeschoolers? Do you
Mm-hmm.
need to be a teacher to homeschool? There's those, but there's all these questions about homeschooling that have a reason to be answered, I suppose, at least for you. You need to be sure of those. But for sure, this question about how do you relate to yourself? How do you engage your uncomfortable feelings? Do you know what your identity really is outside of mom? And do you have a vision for your life? And how do you want to show up? And those are to me, those are the really, really big things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could have like the most expensive, well reviewed, and 5-star curriculum. And yes, that is important to have the right materials and resources to inspire the kids to teach,
Yeah.
so the kids can learn from certain things. Um, but yeah, if you don't have really that, more going on the path to having a more secure relationship with yourself, a secure attachment with yourself, it's going to impair the learning process. It really
Yeah.
will. It will impair the growth of your kids. So again, you could want them to learn their ABCs and their geography and geometry and all that stuff, but oftentimes it's just left to them memorizing things, to
Right.
please you or to pass the test. I mean, are they actually embodying it and actually using the knowledge and skills that they're learning? So that's where you just need to be sure to just keep those things in check. And it's challenging at first, for sure. You're going to and it's okay, like we've been talking about. It's actually important to make mistakes. Perhaps you try something and it doesn't work. Like that's
Right.
probably beneficial because then what doesn't work. But yeah, just be,
Yeah.
I guess, open to the possibility of um, seeking out just people like you and other community resources where you're going to feel supported and know how to best care for yourself and
Yeah,
best care
exactly.
for those
You know,
unmet
I
needs.
I requote or I share a lot of your images, I guess, on Instagram because it is just like so spot on. Is there one that you have recently shared that is significantly meaningful to you?
Oh, thanks for asking. I mean, I've been talking a little about sibling conflict, I suppose. I
Yeah.
did a so I've been posting a few recent dialogues, conscious language around sibling conflict. I just did a Q&A on my.
Can I share one? Because I've got it right in front of me.
Yeah, sure. My son wants to go with him.
Yeah. It's called Alternatives to Stop Fighting. It's just saying the word stop fighting, which is like some weird instinct that we have as moms to speak to these heightened emotional like children, make them stop fighting, which is kind of crazy. But anyways, that is, you said that is frustrating. You sound mad. You wish your brother would dot, dot, dot. That makes sense. So like validating their feelings and really acknowledging how they're feeling and trying to help them identify what it is that they're actually frustrated by.
Yeah, just the validation. He's trying. Oh, he wants me to say goodbye.
Oh, okay.
Goodbye. But yeah, just to follow up with that, that's true. Just
Yeah.
validating their feelings, But often, sometimes too, it's just if you're bringing your own sense, bring your own, taking care of yourself first, your own checking in with your reactivity, like the way you talked about earlier, physiology, what's happening in your body, where if you're feeling really tight, tense, like you're gonna yell, go get a drink of water if the kids aren't really, hurting each other at that time. So to bring a sense of calm, sometimes it's just this silent presence of calm that really shifts the energy, and an acceptance of, like, kids are going to want to move that energy out of the body. So giving them the alternative, like, let's go outside and go for a run around the house to get out let some of that, get some of that energy out and move it through your body. And also being aware of kids are often, they want to be involved, they're capable, they're competent. So ask them, like, well, what works for you? What are your ideas? How can we solve this problem? What is it that you might be needing? I mean, sometimes they can articulate it, sometimes they can't, but yeah, things like that. I think in the end, just being aware of your internal physiological state really is important.
Yeah, you are aware of you, and then you actually are showing them naturally that caught, like more is caught than taught. You're showing them how to actually engage their emotions. But even when you're asking them, what do you think you can do? It actually enables them to say, hey, mom actually thinks that I could take this ownership or agency over the scenario. And so they learn that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point.
So,
And I mean,
yeah.
I was just gonna say, and it engages a different part of their brain, like this thinking part of their brain. So instead of staying in like the emotional part of your brain, it's triggering something, like it's firing away things in the thought part, thinking part of their brain, the logic, reason part of their brain. So sometimes they can access that, sometimes they can't. But yeah, it allows them to explore that and just, I mean, they appreciate that. They do it oftentimes. It's like, oh, I do have a really good idea, and it makes them feel that get their core needs met of, like, I matter, because you do matter. This will help them feel like they matter, right?
So, I could keep having discussion with you, but I
Yeah.
definitely want, before we go, you say that you're offering homeschool moms. What
Yeah.
would
So
you like to share with homeschool moms?
yeah, let's go get your water. Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm certified conscious parent coach with Jai Institute for Parenting. So they offer a 12-week program. So I'm in conjunction with them. It's a 12-week program, and I'm using many of my resources through my trauma-informed specialist certification, and my background in education psychology, and in addition to their program, which is a 1 week live Zoom call with me, coaching call with me, and then 1 week of video content with through Jai, and then workbooks. So it's a program to really help transform the relationship you have with yourself, and to feel that sense of, just like what you're doing, like to feel that sense of confidence in who you are as a human, and giving you the tools and strategies to work through whatever kind of blocks that you're facing, roadblocks and challenges you're facing. So I'm super excited about it.
I was going to say, I'm so excited for it. The way that you frame it, or the way you describe it, the way I've seen it, actually, you've shown me. It's beautiful. It's very well organized and very clear. But your heart is just so evident, even that you would go on a playground and have a live with me with your kids there. That
Yeah.
either says you're very daring or else you're very confident in being able to be present at the
Yeah.
same time. And that shows a lot. It really does.
Well, thanks. And I should probably go soon, because I know
Yeah.
he wants me to sing about.
So if anybody has any questions or comments, please put them in the comments down below, and we're happy to answer them after our live. But Erica, thank you so much for spending time with me. And thanks for lending your mom to us for a little while.
I know. Thank you, Teresa,
All
so
the
much.
best.
We'll have to do this again soon. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Talk to you
Okay.
soon.
Take care. Thanks so much.
See you,
Bye bye.
everybody. It was a pleasure to hang out with you guys. Okay.